Joining me now, our Chief Foreign Affairs Correspondent, Andrea Mitchell, former Pennsylvania Governor Ed Rendell, one of our White House correspondents, Kristen Welker, Chris Matthews, host of Hardball, here on MSNBC, of course, and Sandra Lilly, editor of NBCNews.com Latino. Let me start with perhaps the person that may have spent the most time, may know Donald Trump personally best, Chris Matthews. What'd you make of it?
Well, you know, we're going to have to know the results of that interview in a couple of weeks when they have the debate. But I think he is going for the fences. He's trying to connect with the American people in a way that nobody else has in this campaign. Nobody on either side really connect with millions of Americans, not a few people that show up at rallies like Bernie Sanders, but the tens of millions. And I think if you're sitting in American Legion Hall right now or Knights of Columbus Hall or whatever, there'd be a lot of cheering for that guy because they don't trust politicians. They don't trust Democrats or Republicans to deal with the border. They don't think they're anything more than politicians. In other words, they make their deals with the ethnic groups. They take the money. They say the right politically correct things. And nobody has stopped illegal immigration. He says, I'm going to stop it. Now, he says it in an ugly way, but he says it at least. Nobody else is running saying they're going to stop illegal immigration.
Right.
He is. He may have ignited a nationalistic sensitivity in this country. It deals with the fact that the politicians in Washington are spending all your money, not watching the budget. He talked about the debt, and someday it will topple to get too high with the tilt light on there. And they're letting the border go to the point they don't care about it. He's the only guy at least accusing the politicians of not doing their jobs. Whether they think he's fit for a job is another question.
Right, and that's something that he's got to prove down the road. Andrea Mitchell. Yeah. You were emailing, look, the statistics don't match his rhetoric. And specifically exactly. On where immigration is today versus 3 or 4 years ago, which may be the last time he went to the border himself. Things have changed statistically when it comes to deportations and how many immigrants are coming into this country illegally.
Well, in fact, the facts show that from 2010 to 2013, and those are the last years that we have data, that there is a net minus amount of immigration coming into the United States from Mexico. There are a number of reasons for that. It's not just better enforcement. It's also that the Mexican economy has picked up. There are more jobs at home. And the demography of Mexico has changed so that there are fewer people being born. The families are not as stressed. For a number of reasons, there is now a net minus. We've heard this from Homeland Security Secretary after Homeland Security Secretary. This is the testimony. These are the facts. These are the census data. So that is wrong. I'm also struck by, I'm going to have the strongest American military. Well, I don't know if you want to go to South Carolina and campaign in a Republican primary and say that the American military is not strong. But only yesterday we had the defense secretary testifying that they are cutting the deployments and cutting the military budget. And that is because of a Republican-led and Democratic complicity with that. Democrats want to have less out of defense, and Republicans have had to go along with it because of sequester and a lot of other reasons. So there are a lot of factual problems here. A very strong interview, though. I agree completely with Chris Matthews that it is the year of the non-politician, the outsider, right. And he hits that tone better than anyone else. And Katie Tur gave back as good as she got.
Absolutely.
It was really extraordinary television.
No, it was very good. Sandra Lilly, what Donald Trump took pains to try to separate his criticism of who's coming across the border versus Mexican people themselves. What are Mexican immigrants going to hear?
Well, the thing is that you can't really separate. You can't on the one hand say that the country of your birth is like a villain trying to do evil things to this country and then say, oh, but you're nice workers only if you came legally. The point is that things are extremely murky. And I think one of the things that many people, not just Mexican Americans, Latinos, moderate Americans, his use of racial coding like he does. I mean, when Katie asked him about, mentioned that he had been involved in the birther movement, he said, yeah, well, we still don't know. We're talking about the birth certificate of our president. So, I mean, he's still using that, which frankly people find very insulting, and it's a sort of an easy way to drive wedges that are not realities. I mean, like Andrea said, we've been reporting for a long time that net migration is basically zero when it comes to Mexicans coming into the United States, and our border is safer than it's been in a long time. So that sort of racial coding is very irritating, and that's what we see when we're in our Facebook pages and our social pages. The fact that he's not really talking about reality is very annoying to many people.
I feel like in listening to the interview and listening to some of the statistics he says, it feels as if he believes every statistic of an internet conspiracy theorist on the immigration issue, but doesn't believe the people that actually whose job it is to come up with these statistics. Let me bring in Kristen Welker. He invoked Hillary Clinton. You reported this morning where the Hillary Clinton campaign seems to be wanting to use Donald Trump to paint a negative picture on Jeb Bush as well in the entire Republican field. He seemed to almost enjoy that Hillary Clinton targeted him because he gave it right back to her.
Oh, that's absolutely right. I mean, look, Donald Trump gave Hillary Clinton a huge opening, and she took it yesterday, Chuck. She essentially painted the entire GOP field with this brush, saying that they are all, to some extent, begrudging when it comes to dealing with this issue of immigration. And I kept having a flashback, Chuck, during this entire interview to Reince Priebus, March of 2013, his 100-page after-action report after Mitt Romney was trounced by President Obama, saying the only way we're going to win in 2016 is to reach out to people of color, to Latinos. A lot of Republicans say Trump is the opposite of that. A little reality check. President Obama beat Mitt Romney 71% to 27% when it comes to the Latino vote. So the question is, Trump saying he's going to win the Latinos, he runs the risk not only of alienating more, but of making it much more difficult for others in his party.
Ed Rendell, I'm thinking about the T portion of your state in Pennsylvania, you know, and sort of the working class Pennsylvania man or woman out there in the in between Pittsburgh and Philadelphia that feels a little bit left behind, isn't quite sure what this economy has done to them. And I think Chris was alluding to this, that Trump, some of the things he says is resonating with that group of voters.
Well, sure. And this was a great interview from Donald Trump's standpoint, because he made all the points that we've talked about. He touched the buttons of people who are angry, people who are afraid, and he gets some validation from, for example, the San Francisco case.
Right.
That validates, even though it's an aberration, it validates the general theme that he's making, that people are coming across the border who are criminals committing crime in America. So this was a great, great interview for Trump to touch those buttons. The question for him is, he can get up to 16, 17% of the Republican field. The question for him is, can he get any further than that, even in the Republican primaries? And that, I think, Chuck, will be decided by how he does on August 6th. He's got to be angry. He's got to touch the same themes, but he's got to look at least a little bit presidential.
Well, I can tell you this, Chris. I can't find a campaign that wants to have their candidate be on stage with Trump, and I can't find a campaign that wants to say that publicly. They don't want to be on that stage because they think no matter what, they're going to get overshadowed. And you can blame us in the media that we're all going to be focused on what Trump says in every word. He's actually counting on that, I think. But that is a reality that the rest of the campaigns have to deal with.
He seems
Chuck,
to have a lot of
there'll be a
information.
few-
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Chris Matthews.
I was going to
I
say,
think
Chuck, there'll be a few.
Oh.
Go ahead, Chris.
I think he has a lot of information on everybody. He's ready to go after a guy like Charles Krauthammer with tremendous information. I mean, he's already done the oppo with every journalist around, so it's like he's ready with the worst stuff, you know, to throw at you. It's almost like you used to read about in the days of Baghdad under Hussein, where you didn't want to be in a restaurant with one of his kids, Uday or Qusay, because they might make eye contact with you. And you make eye contact with their girlfriend at the time, and you're dead the next day. So, I mean, it is going to be dangerous territory out on that stage.
I'm struck, Chris, and I know, and Ed, I'll let you jump back in here. Everything with him is the most, the least, the best, the worst. Boy, I don't think he ever heard of the term gray area.
Well, you know, I think the average guy out there looks up to that gold tower, and they see his beautiful wife and the way he lives and the fact that he'll say anything he wants, and they imagine $1 billion. They can't even imagine $1 billion. He's got maybe lots of billions of dollars, and who cares about the margin of error? He's got a lot of money. And he says what he wants. They say, that's what I want to be. He's a comic book hero. The average guy doesn't want to be Jeb Bush or Ted Cruz. They want to be this guy. Yeah. And because this guy talks like, he lives like Sinatra, he's got a lot of money and seems to enjoy spending it and bragging about it. And the average guy's making making 50 a year going, Gee whiz,
Yeah.
I want to listen to this guy. And, you know, he's terrible about race and ethnicity. He's terrible about the president being from somewhere in Kenya. He's terrible about talking about rapists coming across the border. When everybody knows that guy comes across the border, a 35-year-old or 25-year-old guy or 18-year-old guy comes for one reason, to make a buck for his family. And in a country that has jobs. And that's it. That's as bad as most people are when they come across the border.
I think,
and as
by
bad
the
as
way,
they ever become.
Chris, I think you
that
just
guy.
gave the campaign a good idea. They'll probably put out a comic book next as campaign paraphernalia. You could almost see it. Ed Rendell, look, you, of everybody in this group that I have on here, you've participated in debates. You've probably had people that you were concerned about could draw you into the mud fight. There's that metaphor that says, you know, don't get into a mud fight with a pig because only the pig will enjoy it. What is your advice to a Marco Rubio? What is your advice? I think Jeb Bush, by the way, is the only person that wants Trump on that stage because it sucks up all the oxygen. But what is your advice for a Scott Walker or a Marco Rubio in dealing with the presence of Trump?
Well, first of all, let me say there are 5 Democrats who probably disagree with you, Chuck. They'd love to get Donald Trump one-on-one.
Well, the Democrats,
next
you're probably
October.
right, yes.
Next October. But what I would advise Marco Rubio and those guys to do is just say, Donald, you're not telling the truth. Here's the facts. And just go back to that and act presidential. Look, Trump may steal the moment. He may steal the moment, but he's got to get over 16 or 17%. And I don't think he can do it with the act that he just demonstrated during our interview. I just don't think he can get there.
Yeah,
People take presidents seriously. In the end, they take it seriously.
That's right. There's a portion that do want to send a message, and then suddenly you get to the next portion. Andrea, there was a lot of Trump that I was hearing that, especially when he was talking about Mexican trade deals, referring to NAFTA, I was getting some Ross Perot flashbacks. Perot was much more responsible in his statistics, but he's appealing to the same sense of, boy, what happened to the American dream? That's what a lot in middle-class America are thinking. I heard some Perot in there.
Yeah, I did too, and of course, trade is a huge issue right now with the Asian trade deal. But what about that suburban woman voter, you know, that we keep talking about? What about the women who drive the vote in Republican primaries? I'm not so sure that this performance is that appealing. You know, saying to the interviewer, "You're naive," and that kind of thing. It was a bullying approach as well.
I think, in fairness, he bullies everybody. I don't think he's. I think he's gender neutral when it comes to the bullying part.
No, that's the case. But I'm not so sure that may be appealing to some blue-collar voters. But I'm not so sure. I don't think that stereotype necessarily exists. And you know, our country is changing. The demography is changing of our country, as of course Kristen was pointing out. And I'm not sure who is still going to respond to that appeal.
And Sandra, you know, when it comes to the issue of Latinos, look, I have some Republican operatives who have said to me, you guys are making more of this Trump thing. This is Herman Cain 999 all over again, being that it seems important in the moment, and in 2 months we're going to forget what Donald Trump did. Will Latino voters forget Trump, or will his face be all the image that's necessary for Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders or whoever the Democratic nominee is?
I don't think it'll necessarily be all the image, but it does tarnish. And again, going back to there's a lot of Republicans, Latino Republicans, that are really trying to go back to, they're trying to move the party to the reality, which is that the polls show that the majority of Americans say that at this point, undocumented immigrants who have been here for a long time, sometimes more than a decade, providing for their families, to be allowed a certain path to citizenship. I mean, the thing is, as Andrew was just saying, the country is changing and demographics are changing. And I think that voters are sort of like angry at the fact that the stereotypes, the terms like self-deportation, the Trump remarks just don't seem to be in sync with what people are saying to them in their churches and their workplaces. So I think that's why that disconnect is something that is still tarnishing, I think, the GOP brand.
And Kristen Welker, you're going to be, I think, traveling again with Hillary Clinton next week a little bit. She's going to be going to La Raza, one of the very large Latino activist conventions. She's going to be making a speech. How much Donald Trump, how many times should we expect to hear Hillary Clinton say the words Donald Trump when she's speaking to Latino voters in particular?
Well, Chuck, I think you're going to hear the word Donald Trump, but I think you're going to see more of the strategy that she employed in her first national TV interview, which was to lump them all together. I think more likely she's going to go after Jeb Bush. And that was something that she made a point of doing, saying that he does not support a path to citizenship. That's where she's going to continue to draw this battle line. Obviously, she has her sights set on the general election, and she sees him as the more likely candidate.
No, it was
Chuck.
the most illuminating part of that interview that she gave over to CNN. Wonderful panel. I appreciate all of you. Andrea Mitchell, Ed Rendell, Chris Matthews. You'll be able to see Chris, of course, in a few hours right here on Hardball. Kristen Welker and Sandra Lilly from NBCNews.com. And a reminder, you can watch the full interview with Donald Trump again on MSNBC at 4 o'clock Eastern and then at 8 p.m. Eastern.